Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fellowship of Fans, the Second Age show, where we report all the latest and greatest news, leaks, and rumors from the set of The Lord of the Rings on Prime, Amazon's upcoming series. We've got some interesting news today, but first, with us today, we have, of course, Hen. Hen, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm fine as usual.
Good as always.
I'm glad to be here. We have some interesting topic.
That's one way. That's one way of putting it. And of course,
Yes.
the man of the hour himself, Fellowship. It's nice to have you back on the Second Age show.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me on. I think, yeah, I was on
You're
last
welcome.
week as well. So,
You're welcome.
yeah, thanks for letting me on my own show. Yeah, but 2 weeks in a row now. But I don't think I'll be back next week. So,
Right.
but yeah, it's nice to hello to everybody as well. Yeah, looking quite maybe forward, but more interested. Interesting to the discussion today. So yeah.
Interesting for sure. With that said, I guess we can dive right into the first one here. So our first exclusive for today is Farazan's son, which is an Amazon original character, Kemen, and Elendil's daughter, Kareen, who we've spoke about very, very much on this show. They'll be in a romantic relationship in the first season of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. So we have a new romantic relationship. It seems like that's an ongoing theme for this show, and I think it is for many shows. What are you guys' initial
Uh,
reactions for that?
uh, yeah, I find it like it's very understandable that they would want a romantic subplot somewhere in this. They have to at least, but I mean it's understandable. And I actually like the idea of a romantic relationship between two kind of warring parties, like the faithful. They're not yet the faithful and the Kingsmen, but you know what will become the faithful and the Kingsmen. So you have Andil's daughter and Farazan. So like it makes sense kind of within the descriptions of the characters. Certainly Kareen's, which we know that she's described as politically minded and that this becomes an issue as the political ideas within their family become more and more split. So basically, the idea is that she's, you know, in a relationship with the other side, so to speak. So naturally, she'll have a sympathy for um, Emmons and, by extension, I presume Farazan's point of view, and also vice versa, possibly.
Mm,
And also, I think very, very likely because of the circumstances, as is usual with these kind of forbidden romances, that
romances?
it has, yeah, that it has a bit of tragedy, you know, lurking for it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hitting kind of all the beats that you'd expect a subplot like this to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad idea, but at the same time, I think the fans at large are gonna hate it, and
hmm
kind of not so much that I'm full defending it. It's just that I find it kind of humorous for Amazon or the showrunners as almost kind of like the list of things that will creative decisions that will annoy fans, and then seemingly checked one box after the other, very very methodically.
Yeah,
Because these romance subplots tend not to be the most popular portions of the narrative with fans.
I
Um,
think first off, the main positive out of this is that it does solve, as Hen mentioned, um, the uh, divided bit in Kareen's, well, of course, Elendil and Isildur's family. That divide they've known about for a while due to the Night Edge media character breakdowns, and I think for me that's kinda as far as it goes because first of all, but in regards to how fans will say, and of course, Ben and Carl, we'll probably been in here knowing about the community and how of course certain reactions when we talk about news we drop and how it's going to be reactions towards it. And first of all, you've got two original characters. Second of all, they are that you've got the with it's a faithful versus the king's men. And now third of all, they're in a romantic relationship. As Ken says, it seems like potential, like the ticking boxes of, this is probably going to make a lot of people angry. And I don't like this idea, not really for any of those reasons to an extent, but mainly due to the fact that I just don't want it to take away from the relationship between Miriel and um Farazon, because with this I can 100% see by the downfall of Numenor, the reason we never know of a Kareen or an Isildur's sister is because she died with her like husband or lover, Kemen, Farazon's son, at the downfall.
Mm-hmm.
Can easily see that happening. Then of course we also have that famous shot of Miriel with the water about to engulf her and this tragic end. And I just hope that this does not take away from that.
I can definitely see that being a thing, and I 100% understand that concern. I will say what I like about it is that it shows, I think that, at least initially, there's a nuance in the relationship between the Kingsmen and the Faithful, and that it's not so black and white.
Oh yeah,
which I think is a good thing. I think that, it's a sign that this is maybe being handled with more care than it could have been, potentially. But yeah, I would agree. I hope that this isn't to replace the tragic end that we know of Muriel and to somehow have that be kind of the the climax of that story for sure.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And of course the one thing I can see, I'm sure the first thing people are going to be react to this is like, oh, another romantic thing, because of course we have Disa and Ewan the third.
That's
Then
different. They're married
but,
though.
married, but then of course we have Aronde and what's her face?
Bronwyn.
Bronwyn.
That's much more comparable, yeah, because both of those are forbidden relationships.
And then this will go into in a bit. I don't think this is as forbidden as like that. And then of course,
not accepted by the parents. You get my point, though.
Yeah. Then you have maybe I know of course Galadriel and Halbrand is in a relationship like that, but we've got that connection. It's like maybe some people are starting to get worried that this maybe being like there's so many love stories and happening all in the first season.
That's true,
but
I mean,
a bit soap opera.
Yeah. As long as the relationships don't get too entangled, I think it's not going to feel soap opera-y. I think there were lessons to be learned from what they did with the love triangle in The Hobbit, and not that
love triangle, but
yeah, it was a weird thing that wasn't really handled the best. I think that's well known in the community. And there was nothing wrong with Tariel as a character. She was actually in my opinion, she was actually a really good original character, but that they kind of ruined it with that weird relationship. It just seemed too forced. So I think as long as these things don't seem too forced, and that they work really well within the story, I think we can expect to see relationships pretty much in every kind of major area of the story.
Yeah, I will. But the one thing, though, it's a good example that you brought up, because I think in terms of the way a lot of fans are going to look at it, just going to look at it in the light of King and Tauriel. They're gonna look on Bronwyn as like the new Tauriel to some extent, or in this case, kind of. I mean, it's different, of course, but on Kareen.
Yeah.
And people can get very easily kind of have preconceived notions about it, and if they go into the show thinking they're not gonna like it, they're not gonna like this particular aspect of it.
Okay. Yeah.
They're gonna find they're gonna convince themselves that they don't like it.
I see what you're
You get my
saying.
point? And so, yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, I'm personally less concerned with the psychology and more concerned with how it's written and whether
Yeah,
it's
me
whether it's
too.
good or not. So
Yeah, me too.
yeah,
I don't have a conceptual issue with this relationship at
Yeah.
all. I just find it. I think the fan reaction is gonna be. I've decided that I'm gonna look at it humorously.
Yeah.
I'm gonna,
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I'll say I think
Mhm.
it's less for me anyway. It's less of an issue than something else that we talked about a few episodes ago, which was the possibility, which is this is just speculation, the possibility of a relationship between Elendil and Miriel. I think this is two original characters, so for me it's a lot less problematic. That's just kind of my 2 cents there.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm sure for a lot of people, that's the opposite.
Yeah.
The fact that is even having original characters is just a switch off.
Sure, yeah. Well,
for
I
them
mean,
and
for
them,
me personally, I accepted from the beginning that they would have to have original
Yeah.
characters. I think it's a big pill to swallow because there seem to be so many of them.
I think
but
the
if they make the
fair-
story work, then I mean, that's kind of the bottom line.
I think the fair way to look at it is not like the fact they have original characters, is what they do with them.
How they contribute to the story. Yeah, 100%.
You have a really interesting, Farazan's, a protege character,
Yeah.
and then do you have, an Adar, maybe Galadriel's brother down the line thing, whatever as well. So there's ways you can take that, and I think of course
Yo, man.
we do we do have more stuff. So we got more context than just this, and it's quite interesting. And who wants to take this one away?
Sure, yeah, I can go ahead and just read the next little bit, which gives us a little more context into where this idea comes from that they're in a romantic relationship. So our next little bit is that during a banquet scene in the throne room, Kareen, Isildur's sister, and Caiman, Pharazon's son, are dining together on a table for two.
And
Further
and the
context to
next
that scene, we also have that there's a scene in the throne room during a banquet, which is the same scene where they're sitting at this table, where lots of people are complaining about the elves, not wanting to offer them any help from Numenor. Pharazon wants the opinion from a non-politician and insists on Kareen's views. Also, when Pharazon asks Kareen to speak, immediately before that, he tells his son to sit down and be quiet because he already knows what his son thinks about it. So there's some tension
I
there.
think, this is just to further enforce, that, and I think an interesting thing away from all this that has come to my head. Remember, I'm sure that the lovely editor Kyle will have this on screen right now.
That's me.
But the Galadriel banquet scene released a few months ago with the announcement of the Reddit. I'm thinking together. Do you think this could be the same scene? No,
think so, yes.
I think it has to be, 100%.
Yeah, because I remember elf hating or elf support, whatever, was another thing mentioned there. But away from that, so of course, being on a table for two, unless brother and sister, which of course for other scenes we've heard of, they're not
Friends. I mean, they could be friends. Sure.
Could be.
I mean, we have we have enough context within Kareen's character description and other things that I think it's very you can see that that's kind of the purpose of the character in a way.
Yeah, it kind of seems like a given, right? Like Elendil's daughter
Yeah.
and Pharazon's son. Kind of it's just kind of
It writes itself.
yeah.
Also, another thing, I'm thinking just how god awful these names are as well. Kareen and Kemen. Like Kemen doesn't really roll off the tongue from them. And I remember when he first
I mean,
released
it's
Kareen.
fine, except
Kareen. We had
I'm going to
whole
wait and
French
see
talk on
how
Twitter.
the inflections in the names are pronounced in the show. That's what I'm going to wait for.
I think what people saw, or the French audience, Karin, I think translates to Karen.
Kind of, yeah.
They're going to be in the show, be seeing Karen.
Yeah.
But I think Karina is
Karina,
interesting.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Karina, yeah.
Yeah, if
Kemen, I don't know how.
Yeah. And again, I don't know, do we know for sure that that's not another code name?
I don't think so. That's the proper name on the list that we had for a while now. And it reads like it looks kind of Numenorian, like it's not, it's not.
Yeah.
I think Kevin is a fine name. It's like it's okay.
Mm.
Kareen is a little bit, sounds very kind of
Contemporary, maybe.
like I've known Kareens,
Well, I would say the same thing about Bronwyn, but Bronwyn seems to fit better.
Yeah, Bronwyn works.
Yeah,
Bronwyn.
that's interesting.
Arendeer took me a while to get into my head as well. That was weird.
I think that one makes the most sense, though. But anyway, we're a little off topic. We're a little off topic.
Their naming conventions are weird.
Yeah,
especially the hobbits, actually. But yeah,
I think in this scene, what we're starting to see is when we go back to Kareen's character description, particularly challenged when the political leanings within her own family become increasingly divided, and this is so I maybe starting to see here where maybe she publicly says that because that's her boyfriend's father, that I don't trust the elves, and of course Elendil, who we know saves Galadriel, and of course Galadriel is at this banquet as well, so presumably Elendil as well. So maybe we're starting to see,
I kind of when I first read it,
the rebellious daughter.
When I first read it, I kind of thought the other way around, maybe like that Isildur would maybe be more sympathetic to the Kingsmen originally, and then kind of be swayed over.
Maybe
but
Amazon
this could very well be.
Actually, I'm not sure because we have something from Vanity Fair about I think Isildur. Isildur is also in a way finding his way.
I think the problem here, I think Isildur is going to be away from the politics, and whether with Ken, you're seeing political, because he's of course just a sailor.
Yeah.
And in the first season.
That's a good point.
And and also again, similar themes throughout these episodes. The elves, what's happening with them? From Numenor to Middle Earth. Are they going to support them? Who likes it? Who doesn't like it? How is this going to create almost maybe a divide within Numenor? Particularly, maybe this is more the I think we're talking about before we went on there. This darker Game of Thrones-esque, Machiavellian setting. They'll probably will see in Numenor, and that's the wide thing that comes from this scene as well.
Yeah, I agree. It shows kind of the internal workings of how the politics is going to work for sure.
And this has come to my head now. What happens if Farazon has purposely told his son to get into a relationship with Kareen? Maybe that's because from here it seems like he told his son to sit down.
I don't think so because I don't think it will be played like that. But I think it's very likely that Farazon will play it like that to Elendil at some point to taunt him. I think Farazon has a great burn coming Elendil's way for later seasons.
And
a line from Macbeth comes to mind. No, Macbeth, Othello comes to mind.
Yeah, and I think another thing this brings up. Last time we've actually reported Amazon's son. Why has Amazon created not only a sister to Elendil, but now a son for Farazon? Funnily enough, when the ex-showrunner interviewed with the failed showrunner interview with We Did, he was going to give Celebrimbor a child. Now, so maybe
I think Celebrimbor in the Shadow of Mordor games had a family, like a wife and a child. I think. Yeah. So that's interesting.
And
it makes sense.
Yeah.
But of course, that's just away from the But why is because I think originally when we first knew about Farazon's son was during actually a production sheet leak, which we'll have on screen right now. I'm joking. Only kidding. We don't want to get him taken down. But
enough DMCAs.
But yeah, enough DMCAs our way. But we did see it through there. I think the name was Kemen, or maybe spelled a bit differently. I'm not sure, but that's what we've been told. Of course, we did get Hadrith Halbrand a bit wayward, but it is interesting that why have they gone for this? Farazon has a son. Any ideas?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One is this relationship, which helps kind of underline rivalry. The other thing that I think is very likely is to give us a sympathy card for Farazon.
Yeah.
I think when Kemen is possibly like killed or something.
Yeah.
I think that's very likely. I
think so too.
I think Kemen is not necessarily very long in this world.
It certainly adds some more nuance to Farazan's character when he ultimately
Yeah, and
does,
then you kind of
usurp the
you pity him
throne.
at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It
think
gives
so
him
too.
motivation too,
Yeah.
because if
Yeah.
this happens in a war in Middle Earth, like in the Battle of Guathol or something, he certainly has a much stronger cause to lead an anti-interventionist,
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, that's very well pointed out. I wonder if Kemen will be part of the fleet that heads to Middle Earth in that case.
Yeah,
No.
and maybe they fight, and maybe they disagree and fight just before Kemen joins the army out of spite. Those sorts of things. Very typical dramatic. Like,
Yeah.
I don't mean that in any kind of deprecating way. Just
And the next thing that I want to mention is who is going to be playing this Kemen, Farazan's son. And I think something someone really interestingly mentioned, I already think Leon Wadham is a Numenorian, but regardless, someone did actually, a source mentioned that I note that the poster is number 22 between Farazon 19 and Elendil 21. Of course, that could mean nothing, but I think it's another interesting coincidence. So even furthermore,
also, we narrowed down just about everybody else except
That's
Leon,
true.
didn't we?
That's true.
So,
yeah, and
but
he
by
does look
elimination,
quite
it would almost have to be him.
similar to Farazon's one at the same time as which when I first. I actually need to pull it up again real quick, but yeah, that is an interesting thing around the fact that Leon Wadham and of course what's her face Emma Horvath. I know we don't have Lakitty on today, but I'm sure she would be
Yeah.
making us 100% sure to know if they'd be
Yes.
interacting on.
I would love to hear her take on this for sure.
But I just think around this, the thing I think it is not one of the biggest problems with the show, but I think due to circumstantial things within the current beliefs around certain stuff, I think it will potentially to some seem like that, because 100% what I can see is why is someone from the faithful like in love or marrying someone from the King's Men. I'm sure that's probably we're going to be seeing a lot in the comments. So what do you guys say to that?
I mean, for me, it's like I said earlier. Like there's nuance. Like if this Kingsman versus the Faithful thing isn't handled well without the nuance, then it's just not going to be good. So I think the writers are wiser than that. I think that this is deliberate, and I think that whether this is intentionally to add nuance, it does add that nuance, and that the relationships can be more than just this or that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've decided that rather than spending too much of my breath defending it to angry fans, I just look at the responses and laugh my ass off over what Amazon has gotten themselves into.
I mean, for me
That's
personally,
my policy with this.
I don't see the anger. I don't see this being a problem, just because, like
I do.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you
And
do.
how?
But it's two original characters. I don't. Yeah.
I think that's the thing.
You see
It's
the anger
original.
too, right?
No, it's two original characters.
But that's
the
really
sentence.
the issue. That's really the issue is the original character part, right?
Which is which I was saying. That's the thing. As opposed, it's not actually probably the biggest worry compared to other things like Adar, etc. But with two original characters and stuff like that, it'll probably get pushed higher up.
Yeah,
that's what I
But it's like you said. I think as long as it doesn't take away from or minimize the other relationships and the big events that we know of, like the tragic end for Muriel and things like that. As long as it doesn't take away from those things, I agree. I think it's fine.
And this is the final talking point I wanted to put forth to, how do you say it? Put forth to the, not the audience, to the panel. That's how I say it. Do you think that at least at the first start of season 1, there will even be, quote, Kingsman, all those type of...
not as such.
I think
No, and I think that's maybe why you're able to have Farazan's son and Lendel's daughter do that, because time compression. We don't know. Of course, you don't want to show everything already happened off screen. Of course, but that's one of the few things that you have in the second age is showing is stuff like colonialization and Numenor's colonization and like the increase of the Kingsmen. And then of course the development of Black Numenorians. You don't want that to all happen off screen. So do you think instead of seeing that at this like episode 1, we're already into there? Well, it should be technically episode 3. You see this developed over a number of I don't know what you're doing over a number of into the, maybe not even the first season, but maybe in the second season we see them grow. Everyone's thoughts.
I would say for me personally, the tensions have to be there already to some extent. I mean, and they should be.
Yes.
We already know of this elf hating mob scene. We already know about that. Whether Farazan is leading that movement is yet to kind of be seen. It almost seems like it's the opposite from the beginning of the show. But those tensions certainly to me have to already exist from the jump.
Are not the definitive divide.
Yeah, I mean, but that doesn't really happen until Farazan takes power anyway, right? Like that's kind of where it all culminates anyway. So that makes sense to me.
Then something to add, but is around the fact that if Farazan is literally, because we've also revealed and heard from sources is that Farazan is basically in Muriel's ear most of the time. He's actually orchestrating it. He's the person in charge in reality. Then of course Elendil is also friends with Muriel, and I'm sure that we don't know whether Farazan and Elendil hate each other yet or not. But how would Elendil be letting all this slide? If you can't, it's quite hard to give a point across. But
yeah,
Farazan
I think like I said, like
between those two must not be there yet, at least, which is maybe why you can have this relationship.
I get what you're saying, but it's like I said, I think that tension still has to be there, whether it's like you said, full out, But I think there will be, those feelings will still be there for sure, underlying.
And
it's almost like it's bubbling up or something.
But do you know what I was thinking at the same time? Elf hating. I think with that, of course, you can blame it to but the rise of the faithful, the rise of the Kingsmen. But even so, if this is time compression, and maybe potentially you don't really want, it's not the end of the world if you don't want to go to Middle Earth and save them. You don't have to be like a Kingsman in order to think that, because it depends what happens if they've never been to Middle Earth before. Maybe they've rarely been, because some people might not want to have an army to send it to Middle Earth. Maybe that being elf hating doesn't necessarily mean a Kingsman.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. They're not directly split up into factions because there's no real leader for the movement yet.
Yeah, because and even the fact that if an elf is coming to Numenor and saying, "Can you fight our wolves for us?" We're on an isolated island. Why should we go to Middle Earth and save them? I don't want to lose my husband. I don't want to lose my child.
That's a really good point, actually, because I think.
And then
sorry, go ahead.
No, that's basically
situation.
Yeah,
in a way, yeah.
I don't want to seem like I'm a Numenorian patriot. And maybe my nationalism is showing quite
personally?
Here, but maybe I'm sounding a bit like a Numenorian patriot. Actually, a funny thing was, when Farazan was actually giving, I think, a speech about how you should actually help the elves. I think I forgot if it was a crew member extra, and of course I can say this because, without giving anyone away, because like 250 extras on the set, so. It's always going to be impossible. Of course, I won't give the costumes away, stuff like that. But someone did say like they were like a Numenoid resident, and it was like they personally felt uplifted and confident to want to go to Middle Earth to fight the elves because of how good Tristan Gavel's speech was. So yeah, that's a side thing.
Yeah. But you
but-
brought up a good point there too. It's like the Galadriel's presence on the island to begin with is kind of something that could start that conversation up again, right? Like that will inflame those tensions to the point where maybe that those factions do start to kind of firm up and you know become a real issue, where there's the actual like a live debate taking place over, you know, elves and whether they should be helped and what good
Maybe
what good are they for anyway, right?
Yeah, absolutely nothing. Okay, and like the spark, spark that
Yeah.
that lift, the spark that lit the flame.
Yes.
I think.
But like I said,
yeah,
like those that still there still has to be that political kind of tension there, whether it's, you know, really well established or not. That it kind of still has to be exist.
There needs to be an impetus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another thing as well is of course our good friend goes by Melkor, who runs the Twitter. Make sure to check that out. That'll be in the description below. He actually, when we told him about the news, he actually had an interesting point, and just something to think about. He said, "Is it just me, or does it seem like they're switching Farazon and Gimmelkud's roles?" And and I don't agree to the extent that they're like Amazon, you know, like aren't gonna show or maybe reference Gimmelkud at all. But I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name. And why am I saying sorry as like he's a real person? But I think. Do you think we will see, because we are seeing Palantir at some point in season 1, is it worth having Farazan's father alive during this? Because he's the one who really spurs on the Kingsmen.
I mean,
to
he
some
shouldn't
extent.
be. He shouldn't be. But I could see
Well,
them.
Amazon-
I could see them
Maybe she-
combining different aspects, you know, of the two
Mhm.
characters
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
I would like I'd like the parents of Farazon and Elendil to be in this to some extent because I like the kind of multi-generational kind of aspect of stories like this.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to wait and see.
But at least we are.
And of
getting-
course, if they're not, then you will have the people that don't like the original characters be all the more vehement for, well, why are you giving us these original characters instead of these older talking characters?
I would say for me the
we'll
argument.
have to wait and
yeah.
see what Amazon is concocting.
Yeah,
there.
my line.
I would rather
Yeah.
see, yeah, exactly. I would rather see them create original characters than completely change, you know, canon characters. For me personally,
Would you rather? Okay, here's a question. Would you rather see this Farazan's son and Elendil's daughter relationship than maybe see, for example, more of like Palantir, the relationship between his father, which of course was more like canonical. I don't know how to say it, but something like that. Do you think that's the argument some people will make? You're taking there's so many like established law things that you could have gone instead of going for this system by the loving each other route. Not loving each other. Oh my god, what have I said? Sister and yeah, Farazan's son. What about that?
yeah. I mean, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one for sure. I would like to know the showrunner's reason for things like that. I'd be really interested to hear that for sure.
It'd be interesting seeing the general about the showrunners and their comments.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with all of that said, we can, you know, wrap up unless anyone has any final words. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'm fine.
Okay.
No, all good.
Good. Well, we've learned some cool, interesting new things today. We'll ultimately just have to wait and see how it plays out in the show, how these characters contribute to the plot, and we'll go from there. Well, we can hope for the best.
Indeed.
Yeah, well, let's hope.
Yes. Thanks again for everyone for joining. We'll see you in the live chat, and then we'll see you again very soon. Until next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.